Hello and welcome. On this Uposita, the full moon of June, maybe where and when you're watching this the day after, but I'm going to talk about meditation today and answer some of your questions on how to meditate, a question I always like to see. It'll be followed by, I'll separate it, I'll make a short separate video on how to meditate, which hopefully will be released also today, in order that you can watch that on its own and maybe use it as the beginning of a guided meditation. Uposita, full moon of June, known as Poya here in Sri Lanka, is one of their more significant Buddhist festival days, holidays, and a national holiday, where they celebrate the arrival of Buddhism, establishment of Buddhism in this country, having on the sort of 200 years after the time of the Buddha, no less than that, 100 to 200 years after the time of the Buddha, the son of King Ashoka, Mahinda, an ordained bhikkhu, brought Buddhism. He brought his sister also, bringing the Bodhi tree cutting to Sri Lanka, and its establishment and acceptance by royalty here and support of here in Sri Lanka, where it has maintained ever since its very dominant presence, with all of the additional cultural adaptations and additions, but still involving the core teachings of the Buddha that we talk about here on this channel and are very much part of my practice and everyday life. The reason I'm going to talk about meditation mainly today is because I did ask somebody in a comment, asked what's the question I'd most like to hear, and I said it would be, well, how to meditate, because this is very much the path of practice, the Noble Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation, samasati, samasamadhi, are a significant aspect of the practice, in that those points of the Noble Eightfold Path can be divided into three categories. Most are sila, moral virtue, keeping the 5 precepts. And they are in right view, right speech, right actions, right livelihood. That's 4, half of those 8 points. Then also right effort is about keeping sila, but also having determination and sufficient energy and enthusiasm for the practice to maintain mindfulness and right samadhi. So 2 or 3 points relate to the practice of bhavana, mental development, but specifically samadhi being the Buddha's way of describing concentration of the mind, applied focus on a meditation object to develop the power of concentration throughout all of our daily activities, leading to mindfulness. As also does mindfulness, the practice throughout all of our daily activities, samasati, right mindfulness, lead to the ability to have concentration in meditation, samasamadhi. Not just the focus of concentration as in straining and really concentrating on a task, which could be of any nature, good or bad, couldn't it, really, to the benefit of others or to the detriment of others, but specifically with the purpose of not trying but allowing the focus of attention, conscious awareness, to settle peacefully, tranquilly, calmly on a meditation object. This is meditation. This is what is described by samasati, and this is why it's very important in our practice. Now, on these occasions, on religious festival days in Buddhist countries, they're considered days of peace and quiet and tranquility, places that sell alcohol, for instance, aren't allowed to do so. There's no selling of meat. The general feel of the place is like a Sunday in the West that is closed to most ordinary business activities, and a holiday, but a peaceful holiday, rather than that of a Saturday, for instance. But there are some louder activities of bells and whistles, drums and horns, and even fireworks and firecrackers and processions and things that might go on late into the night or start early into the morning. These are the cultural influences that Buddhism picks up along the way on its travels, and as it of course has done so here. Now, I'm very fortunate to live in a Buddhist country where I'm afforded the support of local people whom understand that a bhikkhu doesn't provide his own food, needs feeding. So today I just went on a short arms round because it's little point walking all my normal trip, because most people are busy preparing food for the temples to take big offerings in big ceremonial events. So knowing that from now experience of living here, on these particular occasions I just go on a short local round, return here, but the locals, knowing that, are very supportive and kind and bring me some nice cooked vegetables and some very delicious dana offerings in that sense. So I've been fed on this day without having to go to too much effort of my usual arms round. So this is a nice day for me also. And on that point, I wanted to just briefly touch upon, before we talk about meditation, and if I haven't already said, what I'll do is I'll record a short video with meditation instructions that you can listen to separately. Hopefully it will be released on this same day, but you can also use it as the beginning of a guided meditation. There is, if you want company in your meditation, also the opportunity every day from 6 a.m. Indian time, but you can watch it anytime. These live streams remain on YouTube. A live chanting, short chanting, just a short 15-minute meditation and blessings afterwards. But the short video I'll record after this will just be some simple meditation instructions. Not what you have come to be used to when you think of these words like meditation and Zen and Buddhist monks and Buddhism. And if you put such questions into YouTube, you probably won't see this dowdy old monk in his drab surroundings on your screens. You'll see some very picturesque, even, I call them cartoons, but I think they're called AI created sort of images of these meandering people through jungle lands which seemingly have no disturbance of biting insects and crawling creatures and snakes, but just simply crystal clear flowing water of waterfalls and everything perfect in Instagram fashion environments for peaceful seclusion and meditation, often described by narrators as where monks can contemplate deep and meaningful messages or whatever. You know, this is the idea that is drawn. We're drawn towards aesthetically through the whole beautiful presentation of such videos, orally, because they have beautiful backdrop music or meditation themed sounds like water dripping or something like this, and it's all done to just whet the appetite for the idea of meditation. And of course this is a very important part of introducing meditation, and why we have meditation centers and meditation courses, retreats, in order that people can go to an environment that is fully supportive of their meditation practice. But that is not what meditation really is. Now, of course, bhikkhus and monks, they can either live in monasteries, in big communities, or small communities of monks, just a few, hundreds or a few, and I've lived in both. Or you can live in solitude. And before I talk about meditation a little bit more, I wanted to talk about solitude, because a couple of comments I've received, a couple of comments were referring to, firstly, what is solitude exactly? Describe it to me, was one comment. And another was that, well, I explain that I live in solitude, I'm living alone, but you can hear sounds around me. You can hear family, you can hear people speaking, children, passers-by, and so going on, and it doesn't sound very solitary to you from there. You then apologise for the question. Well, there's no need. It's a very good question. It's a question that would occur to a lot of people, possibly me also. But you see, this is the nature of wherever we live. We are not running away to complete sensory deprivation. A normal bhikkhu's life, a monk's life, is not too different from a layperson's life, in that we are not in this permanent, artificially created sensory deprivation environment of a meditation retreat. We are obliged by our rules to live within a walking distance of a community for that support. So although I'm outside of the village and then the nearby town, there are people living all over Sri Lanka, and I have nearby neighbours. And recording these talks at this same time every day is just prior to their lunchtime, when they come home from school or come home from work. The sort of shift patterns here are slightly different to what we might be used to in the West. But there are people around, so you'll hear talking, as well as the ordinary sounds of nature. But I will say I'm very lucky that most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, if not more than that, all you can hear is nature. Like now, I can hear the sea. Occasionally in the distance you hear one of the big buses on the main road that way, or one of the trains on the railway track that way. But they're very infrequent throughout the day and night. They're just in the early morning and late evening, the rush hour period, you hear a few, which you might pick up in the background sometimes. But you will always have passers-by, people dropping in, visiting. And this is what meditation is about. Seclusion, solitude, what is it? We have a word for solitude, for seclusion, viveka. But there are two kinds, kaya viveka and chitta viveka. There's another kind as well, I've forgotten though. But we often are looking, and you'll hear the name chitta viveka. I mention it occasionally. It's even in the, possibly in my channel description, possibly not. But the first monastery, Buddhist monastery I visited in my own country was called Chitta Viveka, meaning seclusion, solitude of the mind, chitta, as we describe the mind. Not the thinking brain, the mind. Kaya Viveka is seclusion or solitude to the physical body and the thinking brain or sense consciousness, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching and thinking. Of course, we cannot be secluded from thinking until we are absorbed through samadhi into jhana. Prior to that, there's going to be thought. But I'll come to that. These two aspects of seclusion, of solitude, have to be understood. Because what we're trying to develop through, firstly, our introduction to meditation, by way of retreats and, let's say, artificially created environments, is to practice in order to become absorbed into samadhi, sama samadhi, right samadhi. And that enables us to be secluded from the 5 hindrances of sensual desire, ill will, laziness or lethargy, restlessness and worry and doubt, through desire of seeing, wanting, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and through aversion, to those external influences that are not so pleasant. So unpleasant noises, unpleasant smells, sounds, even bright lights you might not want to have. You might want a dark environment to help you in your practice at first. But we develop the power of that seclusion through samadhi in a supportive environment firstly. And we try and structure our environment at home as lay people, in a corner of the house, in a room in the house, in a place, just to be supportive of that. But the ultimate aim is to develop the ability to have chitta viveka. Kaya viveka is the physical environment around us, the external environment around us, giving us seclusion for the practice and supporting that practice in the first instance. Whereas citta viveka is seclusion of the mind. So unaffected by the surrounding environment, being able to have that seclusion and solitude of the mind that is ever present in whatever circumstance and environment that we're presented with. So I am practicing in solitude actually wherever I live, in whatever environment that might be, however noisy or busy, even in a community of hundreds of monks. If I'm not conversing continually with them by way of an interactive relationship, a community of that nature, like within a family environment, living with your own family or with another family, with friends, or working or being in association with colleagues, or socializing, in any environment like that, you're in company, you're with people. Now, although one can still have a feeling of loneliness in a crowd, in company, if you're interacting and you have things in common, as family members do, then you are usually not feeling lonely. But loneliness can be common in any environment. People can be lonely, sadly, and suffer from loneliness in very busy and noisy environments. But they too, but unappreciatingly, are in solitude. The difference being that solitude, when chosen for practice, is voluntary loneliness, voluntary solitude. So the surrounding sounds you hear and any interactions going on, there's not so much interactions, but interruptions you may hear in the background at those particular times of day, are just the natural goings on of nearby houses. I'm not in the mountains or in the forests far inland where you would find such places. And there are retreats, meditation retreats, but they're usually associated and attached to large organized monasteries or organizations, because of course people need that infrastructure, that support. And you will find that you'll go there for a certain amount of days. But as a bhikkhu, and like lay people, we structure our practice within the environment where we live. Now, we may be living in a bit of a transient nature, moving from town to town or place to place as monks, or we may have stayed put in one place for some length of time, as I have in this place now, because it is very supportive of meditation practice and monastic life as a solitary monk. But I also have, within walking distance, I think 4 at least, if not 6, large Buddhist monasteries, all within walking distance, with communities of monks. But within those walls, there's quite a lot of activity and goings on. And they don't have so much in the way of meditation being up there in terms of the top priority. It's very much orientated traditionally here as being the practice of study and learning rather than the practice of meditation and doing. So those are not usually that conducive to my way of living. There are a couple around in this northern regions here of so-called forest monasteries, but I've not visited them because likewise they have communities of monks whom have grown up in the town and different environments, and they're not really the kind of they're supportive of people wanting to go, for instance, today, on an Uposatha day, to spend a very nice day in a beautiful place that's peacefully supportive of bhavana, sitting there and contemplating and thinking deeply and all of this. So that is what we call kaya viveka. But what our goal, what we're looking to try and attain, is citta viveka, and that is seclusion in the mind that we can take with us anywhere and not be reliant on anything. So if I want to meditate, I can meditate sitting here, sitting over there, out there, or over there. I don't need a special asana, a big soft special platform with special cushions and special cloths to sit on. As one of our rules, I am obliged to sit on this thin cloth here, because we have this to protect our robes from what we're sitting on, and also what we're sitting on from our robes or us. So it's just a hygiene and an etiquette matter. But other than that, there is nothing I need. And of course, even without this, or without these robes, or without anything around, if one is meditating for many years, you can meditate anywhere. I think I've said many times before, I've meditated in some most unlikely places and situations, and found those have been some of the most fruitful meditations in the years that I've been practicing, that have led to better and more enjoyable meditations subsequently. So we have kaya viveka, which is the physical external environment, and seclusion from that, where we might go to a meditation retreat. But we have, more importantly than that, citta viveka. That is what solitude is, and regardless of what's going on externally, we can develop that as a quality, something that we have preciously within us, a resource we can use. So on that point, some of the questions now, I'll just go through them. How did the Buddha teach meditation? Well, after all I've just said and how important it is, funnily enough, he didn't teach meditation so much, because meditation was fairly common in the time of the Buddha. It precedes Buddhism and the Buddha, but was used by the Buddha to arrive and in his practice, as part of his practice, firstly with the very ascetic practices he took upon himself, but subsequently to arrive at or to attain to enlightenment. But even prior to that, it was the recollection of his childhood memories of sitting under the rose blossom tree or apple blossom tree or whatever nice pretty tree it was, peacefully on a summer's day watching his father in a ploughing competition, where he was just sitting absorbed and naturally so very much at peace in what we call samatha, which is tranquil, peaceful, calm states of mind, that led, whilst watching the breath, him into samadhi, deeply absorbed meditation, without any effort, but of course within supportive environments. But this was prior to his venturing out to establish or to find the cause of suffering and ultimately the end of suffering, and therefore what became this Noble Eightfold Path I've just mentioned. So prior to that even he was meditating, and many people in his country and in Buddhist history for thousands of years prior to the time of the Buddha have been meditating. So it wasn't something that, oh, it's a new buzzword that you hear on the internet and you hear people say and you hear people mention must be good for you and must be done. It was just common practice, much like we hear the word prayer or the word worship, or it was a form of activity not associated necessarily with religion, but very much an understood way of enjoying your time, passing your time in a constructive way by relaxing the mind and the body. And there are, as a result of that, many forms and types of meditation and yogic techniques and bodily techniques and mental exercises that are historically established forms of meditation that get intertwined with Buddhist teaching and brought forward into this modern day era when people talk about meditation and kinds of meditation. But Buddhist meditation is very simple and didn't require the Buddha to teach so much because his audience, the people he was talking to, were practicing meditation. He didn't, for instance, have to say, you must sit in this particular posture, other than briefly, as is done so in the Anapanasati Sutta, which I'm not going to go through now, but would encourage you to go through, at least in the version in the chanting book, which is a summary, that just describes how one meditates, or how the Buddha came to see meditation, apart from all of the extras one can include in meditation by way of these yogic techniques and special breathing and mental exercises. He saw the simplicity of the meditation he'd experienced as a child as being the only way to really see clearly. That is the word, Pali word vipassana, seeing clearly. But to see clearly the nature of the mind, the cause of suffering, and therefore arrive at what is the end of suffering. And this is where Samma Samadhi comes from. So how did the Buddha teach? With the Anapanasati Sutta. That is the Buddha's teachings on meditation. Other than that, it's referred to often as being something we should be continually practicing, but of course is very significant in that it makes up at least a third of the Noble Eightfold Path. So our guideline to life, our method, our way of living is inclusive of meditation. So if you're not meditating, you need to be meditating. There is no putting it aside, well, I'll do it when I'm older, or I'll do it when I'm not so busy. Because without it, you are not developing the Noble Eightfold Path, and therefore won't arrive at the cause of suffering, and therefore be able to experience the end of suffering. It's as simple as that. That's how the Buddha taught meditation, being that it's very important, but it doesn't need a constant reference, a constant examination of its methods and techniques, and a constant reminder of how to do it. Because once you can do it, it's like learning to swim or learning to ride a bike. You just get on with it. It's done. Once you can float, once you can balance, you have it. It's there. Naturally, you will get better and faster and stronger at swimming, and quicker and go further distance more quickly on your bicycle with practice. But essentially, the floating, the balancing is the initial skill that we need to develop. And this can only be done through simple ways in Buddhist meditation. The many other ways are just historic, that the Buddha found he could leave and not trouble his mind with. Simple remembrance of how he really enjoyed meditation as a child was enough to realize that all he needed to do was sit and do nothing. I will give some further instructions on that again in a minute in the separate video. But that's how the Buddha taught meditation, from his own experience. But primarily to do it yourself, experience it for yourself and enjoy it. And the next question, on meditation, I've kind of put them together so we can, as I invited them as a question I would like to hear, does meditation mean actively not thinking about anything? Can you please explain how it works? Well, yes. As opposed to, let's say, this. What is insight meditation? Does that involve thinking or contemplation in meditation? Or does it mean normal meditation but without hope, insight, will pop up. So there's no normal meditation, or these terms, insight meditation, even vipassana meditation, are terms that have been coined, been used to attract people's attention and give ideas and practices a title, a name, a meaning, if you like, but not necessarily directly taken, well, certainly not taken from the suttas, because vipassana, to see clearly, this Pali word, isn't a type of meditation, but a quality one develops through meditation, as one does also develop wisdom, which you could attribute to the word insight. So sila, samadhi, panya, moral virtue, meditation and wisdom, wisdom, panya, comes in the Noble Eightfold Path as right view, right at the beginning, and just the one point. But also the most important point being that it contains right view, that we are not a self, there's rebirth, there's karma, the characteristic of its existence, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, which I've spoken at length for in most of these talks and videos, so I won't go into it just right now. But this correct understanding, right view, is wisdom, but not an intellectual knowledge, an understanding. Now that insight is necessary to help you with meditation, but also will come as a result of meditation. So like mindfulness and concentration, sati and samadhi go together like two sides of the same hand or two sides of the same coin. So does wisdom and meditation. Meditation brings about wisdom, but also you need a little bit of wisdom to bring about good meditation. Firstly, you need the wisdom to know that it is imperative, because of karma, that you keep precepts. Because if you don't have a foundation of sila, moral virtue, meditation, samadhi, deeply absorbed states of sama samadhi, right deeply absorbed states of meditation, cannot be enjoyed. You might experience seclusion through distraction, through sensual pleasures, even if it's just from the body and imagination. But that is not samadhi, sama samadhi. That is a yogic or a meditation experience. And our form of meditation we're training towards is away from experience. It is having insight into the mundane nature of all things, being impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self, yes, but it is not experience of those things. It is seeing clearly, developing mindfulness, the nature of thoughts as they come, thoughts as they go, feelings as they come, feelings as they go. Things arising and passing away, as you often hear. Observing this in the first instance whilst we're training. But ultimately, samadhi, jhana, is absorption, secluded from this. Citta viveka, seclusion of the mind, not experiencing these insights. So it is not contemplation. It is not the way we base meditation. We are able, however, having practiced sama samadhi, right concentration, having focused our minds, developed the power of concentration, able to use, like in those videos, that power of concentration to explore deep states of mind and contemplations and insights and all of these things. But the Buddha doesn't encourage us to do that, because we've already established what we need to establish to be free from suffering, and that is seclusion from the five khandhas, this physical body and thinking brain, nama rupa. With seclusion from that, there's no further contemplation required. So back to the previous comment with regards to how is it about actively not thinking. Actively not thinking isn't really possible. We cannot stop thinking, and we shouldn't try to stop thinking. Initially, we observe thinking. We observe the thought process. Know when thoughts are arising and thoughts are staying a while and thoughts are passing away. Know when one thought leads to another thought leads to another. Using techniques that might be such as tracing that thought chain backwards to its origin, just to really delve deeply into the thinking process and understand why the thinking process is triggered as it is. You will arrive at, ultimately, always the same answers. Apart from that, all these thoughts and our thinking is impermanent and it's unsatisfactory and it's out of our control. Those characteristics of existence, time and time again, which, although insightful, once experienced, once known, that's it. One doesn't really need to look at everything that arises, stays a while and passes away and say, anicca. It's established, it's known. The comfort, the seclusion comes from knowing that, having it ingrained. That's right view. That's getting onto the first stage of enlightenment, stream entry, sotapanna. Having that ingrained, instilled right view about anicca, dukkha, anatta without any doubt. It doesn't require any further contemplation, study, research. If you're not getting it, you're not doing it. You're not seeing it. So you need to develop the concentration, nothing else. And the only way to do that, like training a horse, is to rein it in. And we rein it in with a meditation object, focusing our attention on something. So the thoughts keep coming. Don't try and stop them. We don't actively not think about anything. You can't do that. But you actively think about something else. And in this sense, we think about the breath. So I think the next comment coming up might be about that, or might not. Yes, it is. That's good. Hey, do you watch the breath, or do you focus on the breath in some bodily area? So how you focus on the breath is very much up to you. And you'll often hear that one brings one's attention to the tip of the nose and the air coming in and the air going out at the tip of the nose. We're breathing in anapanasati meditation or any breathing meditation. We should always be breathing in through our nose and out through our nose also. We're sitting for some length of time, so one should not be breathing through the mouth unless you have to, because you have something wrong with your nose. It's blocked temporarily or even permanently. But if you're breathing through your mouth, it's usually because you're, like I just have then, drawing breath to be speaking, saying something, or to get more oxygen in because you're exerting yourself in some energetic way. But other than that, it's not good to be breathing through the mouth. Firstly, on the inhalation, you'll be inhaling all kinds of things you shouldn't be. And even on the in the exhalation, you're drying out your mouth. You're making your mouth uncomfortable through that activity. So we're just keeping our mouth shut through meditation. And this is why people say observe the breath at the tip of the nose. But the Buddha never said that. Not in any of the suttas. And not in the Anapanasati Sutta. But he says, observe the body of the breath. And that is interpreted to mean, well, I interpret it to mean, like a body of water, a lake, for instance. The whole volume of breath that one inhales and the whole volume of breath that one exhales is the body of breath. Not trying to see the breath going through the body. Many people describe this nature of feeling the breath going down to the fingertips and down to the toes. Now, I've been meditating for 15 years and I cannot feel my breath going down to my fingertips or my toes. I can feel my fingertips and my toes, but I must say, as much mindfulness as I like to think I've developed, I cannot analyze the oxygenation of those parts of my body. In fact, at my age, I'm fortunate to even be able to feel those parts of my body, let alone, and anything other than that is imagination. So that's unnecessary additional thinking, contemplation, over-analytical thinking and contemplation, rather than observing what is just there, which is a whole volume of air, body of air, going into your lungs via your nose and out of your lungs via your nose. So there's nothing wrong with the tip of the nose, or even anywhere between there and the lungs, which we can just about know. When you begin your medication with a medication, it is meditation, so not too much of a slip, but the meditation with a large intake of breath, a deep in-breath, you have a good feeling of air going into your lungs. That's the body of air that we are bringing our point of reference to. It is that we're observing. The longer you sit, the more subtle it will become. Not as a result of losing interest or losing mindfulness, or it shouldn't be if we're trying to really keep our concentration on the meditation object, but because you breathe less. The calmer and more relaxed you become. As your body needs no more oxygen or less oxygen, you breathe more slowly. As your thinking brain slows down the thinking process, it stops overheating, you need less oxygen, less air intake. So the breath becomes very subtle to almost negligibly present. And at that point, you just know you're breathing in and you know you're breathing out. Deep. The Anapanasati Sutta describes it quite detailed in knowing it's deep, knowing it's shallow, long, short. I like to also notice the temperature of the breath as I'm breathing in and the temperature of the breath as I'm breathing out, because you'll know if it's cool outside, you'll feel that breath as you breathe in. If it's warm outside or hot outside, as it is here and humid, you'll feel the breath as warm and hot and humid as you breathe in. But when you breathe out, wherever you are, it's undetectable because it's adapted the same qualities as of your body. It's become the temperature of your body and the sort of ambient normal humidity, water content of the air coming out of your body is unnoticeable. So we notice the breath as we breathe in being different from that of the body of air that we breathe out. And this can be better done just with observation of the whole breath. If you require a specific point like the tip of the nose, that's also okay, but it isn't necessary. So on that note, just to surmise, I think keeping it short, keeping today's questions on meditation, but also on where we're meditating, because at first it is, yes, important to find a supportive environment to develop this skill. Once you've been meditating for some time, once you can absorb into samadhi, then really location is much less important. You can meditate anywhere. Things will not distract you. You'll be able to enjoy meditation even in the busiest and noisiest environments, secluded from those distractions, that busyness, that noise. And isn't that, after all, why you're watching this? You're not watching this channel to learn how to do something maybe you are, something technical, some form of exercise, gain some form of achievement. You're looking, or we should be looking, to learn from our discussions with each other how we let go of all that wanting to be, wanting to become, wanting to have, wanting to achieve, and be accepting of just how it is, here and now in the present moment. And be able, as a result of understanding that through this insight, enjoy that present moment to the full, relaxing fully into that present moment as being all we have, and also the place where we're determining the future. That future is fully dependent on the causes and conditions we put in place. Now, whether that's your devotional practices at the temples with occasions like today and offerings, it's all good, developing the qualities of generosity. But if you can also train the mind and the body in meditation, then you will be enabling, firstly, nama rupa, your thinking brain and your physical body, the five khandhas, to cope very much more efficiently and work very much more efficiently in different environments and whatever conditions you're presented with. But also to be, where those conditions are not so favourable, able to be voluntarily and enjoyably secluded from them. But this isn't, and just to address another comment I noticed but I haven't remembered and can't recite completely, but something about, aren't we able then to enjoy things, sensual desire? Why is that a bad thing? Of course it's not. Where we can appreciate a beautiful sunset, a vista, the sounds of nature, the temperatures of the spring or the summer, our surrounding environments, the taste of food, we can enjoy those things. But through meditation, we learn that we can also enjoy the absence of those things, because those things are only sensual desires and temporary, impermanent distractions. Whereas samadhi, absorption, jhana, is not of this conditioned environment. A glimpse of nibbana through meditation shows you something other than what we experience as part of this conditioned world and environment and the five khandhas. So I hope you can enjoy the rest of this Uposatha today if you have a day off, or if you're watching us at the weekend, with the opportunity to keep 8 precepts is a very useful way, just on one day a week or one day a month even, to help support your overall practice through the rest of your time, help support keeping the other 5 precepts, and also a way of giving yourself, freeing up a day to do something different. And when you can learn to meditate, that is something you can do that's different. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't use any resources. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to turn on YouTube to see the pretty pictures or hear the pretty sounds. And you certainly don't need to travel to the other side of the world. That is all contrary to the practice of meditation. If you can find anywhere in your home, in a corner somewhere, your bedroom, or in a very busy household, just go and lock yourself in the bathroom. It's good enough. Any piece of floor, you can sit for some time alone, undisturbed, is all you need for meditation. And that can be found in most places. So, on that note, if there's something useful there, please use it. If not, just let it go. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.